Hey, what's up? I'm gonna sit here and be talking for a while, so get prepared. In this video, I was gonna take the time and kind of go over all the maps and weapons that I've been talking about in some of my other shorter videos that should be added to Battlefield 6 and why they would be a great addition to it. Um, I'm not gonna go super in detail. I'm just gonna go quickly over it to an extent. Like, I'm gonna talk about it, but, I'm not gonna spend fucking 5 hours talking about one fucking location. Um, you know, so yeah. Let's get started with Washington, D.C. I think that would be a great addition for Battlefield after experiencing some of the New York maps. And, I don't think Battlefield has had a game in Washington around the White House. And I think it would be really cool if the Washington Monument, the Lincoln Memorial, and the Smithsonian were included in this map, and also the river right by the Lincoln Memorial would be great, and I think it could be a great rush and breakthrough map, but also possibly a great conquest type map. I think there's a lot in that area that obviously they would have to scale it down to some extent, to make it playable. We don't want superly overly large maps like Kaleidoscope or whatever the fuck that map was from 2042, because you don't want to spend all day fucking walking. If I wanted to play Walking Simulator, I'd hop on a treadmill. Anyways, but yeah, so I think that would be a really great map. I think the last time a game has done something around Washington was like the old school Modern Warfare maps, I think, back in the day. So, yeah, I think that would be something worth experiencing. And, I'd hope to see that, they go in depth with the actual White House, but something cool, if I remember right, I'm gonna have to Google this on my computer real quick, my phone actually. And by the way, I'm not posting any images of these locations because that's a copyright strike risk, so I'm just gonna sit here and talk about these locations. If you want, you can pull up Google Maps and Google Images on your phone during this video to actually get an idea of what the area could look like and what we could do with the maps, and create game modes within these areas, and actually understand why I'm talking about bringing these maps into the shit. I don't remember, what was I gonna fucking Google? Washington, yeah, DC, White House. So, there'd be that main front area and, the Oval Office, of course, but I think this would be a very interesting location. Oh, yeah, let's see. Okay, so yeah, the White House does have several confirmed underground tunnels and bunkers, primarily for security and emergency use. But, another talking point about Washington, during like the 1812 war, the White House burned down at one point. And during that time period, you know, the British were pissed and came back and burned down the White House. So yeah, I thought that was kind of an interesting. I talked about that during AC3, one of my AC3 videos, but I think that this, you know, would be interesting to, you know, create a White House that's destructible, because, you know, it's Battlefield, it's all about chaos, destruction, that sort of thing, but it'd be really fun just seeing all these different locations incorporated into the game. And, you know, it kind of, I could see this kind of playing out like a Bad Company 1 or 2 map if they brought Washington into it. Let's see. And then the next map on the list was Fallujah. I think Fallujah could be an interesting map to add because I like the urban environments of Fallujah. There's not really as much to say than, you know, it's just like I think I like the environment, the setting, you know, kind of the deserty setting, kind of like. But it's also a lot of urban combat, and that was kind of a thing back in the early 2000s, the Battle of Fallujah. And honestly, when I first saw the trailer for Cairo, I thought it was Fallujah, just seeing the equipment these guys were wearing. When I saw the Battlefield multiplayer trailer and they were on Cairo, I thought that was kind of interesting. I thought it was going to be Fallujah. But yeah, I think Fallujah could be a really good place and could really add to Battlefield. You know, just looking at some of these images on Google, like I think that could be a really fun environment and destructible environment. It's gonna play out a lot like Cairo. Yeah, so, and you know, I mean, we have 6 days to Fallujah, but you know, I think Battlefield should be able to make a map and that sort of thing. You know, good helicopter gameplay. I think that was something about the Manhattan Bridge map. I think that one felt a little cluttered for helicopter gameplay. You know, there's just kind of, I don't know how to describe it, there's just a lot in the way. You can't really fly too much in between the buildings because they're too close. But being close together is also important for the infantry gameplay going forward. Let's see. Okay. So I kind of addressed Fallujah, not a whole lot, but we're gonna go with that for now. I think it could be a good, like, in Bad Company there was a map called Oasis, and I think I remember playing that one a fair amount back in the day, and that one was a fun location and really just an overall great map. And you know, that's where I'm going to be throwing in the Australian Outback map too. The reason I recommend that one is because we need to defend the marked objective. Okay, for some reason my microphone died even though I'm talking right now. Anyways, so yeah, Australian Outback I think would be a good reminder of Silk Road. If it really depends on the direction that Battlefield 6 decides to go and how long this game decides to last and how much they actually decide to add to the game. I felt like their weapon choices were very lackluster. You know, they only had like 4 pistols in the game to start with, and it's not a concern if they actually like make a plan and they kind of keep the fan base in on the plan, but there's a lot of like lacking weapons, and it felt very like shortcoming for a Battlefield game. But I kind of get it because, you know, in Battlefield 4, like a good 70 to 80% of the weapons no one used because they just weren't really viable. And you know, and that's the thing too, is like a lot of these companies don't want to waste their time and money, and I don't blame them for licensing, because it's just really a kind of a waste of time and money to get all the licensing, get the company to agree to the payment, and just even to take the time to do all the paperwork for that kind of thing. It just really isn't worth it for how much effort they have to put in for just one game. It's one thing if, like, you know, they got lifetime access to their licensing, but they don't, and it's just for the one game. And you know, it depends on how long this game lasts too. Like, to me, a Battlefield game should last like 5 to 6, 7 years. Content should probably last, they should be releasing content for 3 or 4 years, maybe 5, depending on popularity of the game at the time and how much they actually like push out, if they have a good amount or not. Like right now, like the maps are great, but it feels like they could have had a lot more maps in the game. Right now there's only like 3 to 4 maps for what they're doing on Breakthrough. You know, and then I just played Saints Quarter the other day, and that seems, I don't know, it's kind of a mixed bag. It seems good, but it's very, very condensed and very small. And Battlefield's not quite a TDM game. It's always been like Conquest and Rush. You know, the two maps that really, or two game modes that really explore maps, you know. And that's kind of where it should be, in my opinion. I think that, you know, it could be worth putting 2 to 3 maps into the game and allowing for a free-to-play demo of the game, either through playing a mission of the campaign, or if you did like 2 to 3 TDM matches, 2 to 3 TDM maps, and then maybe like one large-scale map, and then access to 1 or 2 classes. You know, that can help get people to play the game a bit more, but obviously you'd have to limit it so that, you know, people actually want to buy the game. You know, that being said though, I think, yeah, so I just got done kind of talking about Fallujah, but, you know, let's talk about the Minnesota State Capitol. I accidentally skipped over that one. But Minnesota State Capitol, I think, would be a very interesting map to include, because I've actually been there before a couple times in my life and actually have gone through all the levels of the building, and I just always thought that would be such a cool place to, like, you know, walk around and experience like airsoft. And you know, if I can't really do that, hopefully they can just put it in a video game. Yeah, but I think, you know, it could be any state capital. I shouldn't say any, but one that's very similar to Minnesota State Capitol, where it shows its age, and it's been a very great example of just kind of, it's interesting how some of the technology or some of the infrastructure is modern, but they still keep some of the kind of the old historical type uniqueness to the building. And yeah, you know, so I think there's just kind of a lot to look into for that to be a map in Battlefield 6. I know we got 2 New York maps. We got Cairo, Sobek City, then there's Myrak Valley, and a lot of these maps are very good, but a lot of them are also not completely built, and that's what's wrong with them, is that they're not completely built to all the game modes, and that's what's kind of lacking right now. is because you play Breakthrough, and that's the main mode I've been playing just because I have a feeling my KD would kind of drop and I wouldn't have the greatest experience with Conquest in this game just because of how the game plays right now. With bloom and lack of hit markers and like not like the hitboxes just aren't working, and apparently it's because of like certain attachments. I don't fully understand it. This is just what I'm hearing on Facebook, YouTube, wherever, whenever. So, but yeah, I have experienced the hit marker or hitbox issues, and it's just kind of been a consistent issue for me. But anyways, yeah, we're mostly talking about maps right now. But yeah, I think the Minnesota State Capitol, let me look up the area and kind of talk more in depth about it and what they could include as to what would make this map stand out.
Need a medic.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at some of these images, and you know, it's still like there's so much granite here, and then you have like the fucking old horses on top of the fucking Capitol building and shit. And, you know, I just think there's a lot to take in from like kind of just from the voting area to just how open of an area this is and how cool of the arches, and
I'm bleeding out, medic.
you know, there's just kind of a lot to see here and to talk about too. But then there's also other buildings in the surrounding area that can be used for gameplay in Battlefield 6. And you could definitely make a good rush map there, / breakthrough. You know, you'd have 2 objectives in the main state capitol building, but then you would push forward past the building once you took it, or after it, I think. Let's see. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, you know, even the stairways would be really just fun to fight your way up the stairways. And like they got a lot of artwork there telling about history and shit. See that? Just that the state capitol could have been like another TDM map, you know. I think there was kind of a map like that in Warface back in the day, and that was kind of cool to experience back in the day. It was like the state capitol was in Mexico, and you know, the environment was very dusty, and there were like buildings based out of Fallujah in the area, and that was a really fun map to play just in Warface. And Warface, you know, keep in mind, that's a free-to-play game, you know, that's also 15 years old and still going strong and being played to this day, and you know, it has a lot to offer. And you know, anyways, so let's see, I think I talked about the Australian outback a little bit, Fallujah, and the Gobi Desert. Yeah, I threw these 3 in for suggestion. They don't have to be exactly one or the either, you know. I threw those in because, you know, I think, you know, Silk Road was a really good map in the China Rising DLC. I really liked that map, even though it had its balancing issues. I really liked, you know, how they had the bomber planes and the jets, and it was a great vehicle map. You know, there were a lot of tanks fighting across those hills over the years, and I just, you know, yeah, It's a very open map. There wasn't a whole lot of cover, but that's okay. You know, being a desert, you know, mostly you're going to be driving around on dirt bikes based on Battlefield 4, you know, Jeeps, dune buggies, whatever. Yeah, I mean, it'd probably be interesting if they added some, like, Fallujah-based buildings and, you know, threw them in the desert, that sort of thing. Make it a little combination of urban but vehicle combat play. Kind of like that one desert map with the Arch in Battlefield 2042. So yeah, I think that's good map. Let's see. NASA Bahamas. Okay, so I said the Bahamas because I've been there before and it's a very nice place to be. But I also was playing Assassin's Creed 4 not that long ago, and I thought that was a really fun experience playing in NASA. So, yeah, I mean, you just right off the bat, off of looking at NASA Bahamas, they had huge hotels on some of these itty-bitty islands, and they had some big bridges. I'm looking at the islands right now. These big bridges could add to the gameplay, and you could add a lot of jet skis and naval warfare to this. This could be a great map for naval warfare, connecting the Bahamas islands and whatnot, Caribbean islands and whatnot. But there's just also a lot of buildings. It reminds me of Hainen Resort, and that could be a great way to make a new version of the map without overstepping. Although Hainen Resort had its issues with flow and design, and it wasn't a very great way to travel across the map. But yeah, I think this would be a really fun map too to throw into the mix. That being said, yeah, I'm gonna stop it here so I don't if and my way through this. Everybody gives me shit for that. But yeah, and you know, that being said, I think that this could be a great area for naval warfare, but also, you know, you could have some Amtraks to travel across the water and on land too, and continue the gameplay. I think it would be great, you know, conquest map, but, you know, I think the goal at this point for Battlefield is to kind of maybe drop conquest out of the game because of how long some of those games can last. I don't get how people want to play 2,000 ticket games where the fucking game just does not end. Obviously, you want a reasonable pace. You don't want a game that ends too quickly. You don't want a game that lasts forever, where people are just constantly like dying and not getting any kills, or just having any fun for that matter, and not being able to take objectives going forward. Yemen. Okay, so I said Yemen because I really like the Yemen map from Black Ops 2. And that was a really fun area slash map in Black Ops 2, and I think it would be fun to if they reintroduced or just introduce Yemen into Battlefield 6. Although it could be another Cairo, you know, because these buildings are really close together. You know, it doesn't have to be exactly like what they are currently, you know, dealing with, but I'm sure they have the technology to fucking, you know, help them build a map a lot quicker, you you know, with satellites and shit. 'Cause I think that's what they were talking about back in the day for GTA 5 or some other game. That being said, I think, I'm seeing a lot of, let's see, Yemen war. Okay, this area could be a lot better.
We're attempting to capture Bravo.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think Yemen is currently dealing with long conflicts. I suppose I could Google it, yeah, a lot of deserts, you know. This could be also a good map for the TDM free-to-play option type thing. Or just, you know, I think those smaller maps, you know, like, I think it should be, TDM should be removed from the playlist or the quick search, just because it kind of, like, takes away players, but I do think it should be still allowed for, like, private servers, private games, whatever. You know, those TDM maps are kind of great for when you just want to play with your friends, and you know, you want to play Battlefield, but you don't want to be blown up every 2 seconds, I think, and you just want to play against your friends and do like a quick 1v1, free-for-all, whatever. So I think those TDM maps could be good for that. Because, yeah, some of my favorite moments have been just in Battlefield, finding a empty server with my friends and just playing with them, telling them where our location is, and then finding each other, you know. Oh yeah, we're at C objective, come find me. Okay, cool, I'll show up in my Jeep, or my helicopter, or my jet. Good luck surviving, you know. That being said, though, alright, so it looks like, oh shoot, we're already a half hour into this conversation. Anyways, so let's talk about Randok, Bosnia, and Mostar Bridge, Bosnia. I had a coworker from Bosnia, and he'd always bring it up every 5 seconds, so that's kind of why I threw it in there, but I also thought it would be fun to talk about, because I think it could be a good location to include. Yeah, it kind of has this stone arch area, the Vrandok Fortress, you know. I think that could be a cool place to create a game, but it also reminds me of Monte Grappa, you know. I think that would be a cool location to kind of, you know, be a new version of that map, you know, for Battlefield 6. You know, it has a river that goes downhill, it looks like, you know, in the area. Could create a flooding effect, you know, possibly, for the maps in Battlefield 6. You know, not to mention, you know, if you had the bombing plane outpost and you had the sirens to go with it, that would be super cool. I always loved hearing that in Battlefield and having to run for cover, you know, and knowing that a plane was gonna come. Yeah, I think this could be a good map that's, you know, the Levolution. As I was saying, the Levolution events could be great here because, you know, it could incorporate Land King Dam or Lumpini Garden from Battlefield 4. Those two maps, or not Land King Dam. What was the one fucking map? Where there was just kind of buildings, a city that was flooded already, and then when you blew up the bridge, it flooded it even more, and the water level would rise, and you know, that sort of thing. Yeah, I think that would be an interesting way of maybe reincorporating it into this new map based in Bosnia. But you could also incorporate the Mostar Bridge into it. You know, apparently that's a really great, like, tourist site, you know. Yeah, it definitely looks like a really nice, pretty area. So, you could just make that map, like, this a whole separate map too, because we do have 2 New York maps, and, like, this kind of reminds me of, like, what is it, Villa, like, Rio Brazil from Siege, or, like, Brazil from Modern Warfare, the early Modern Warfares. It kind of gives me that vibe, or it kind of gives me, like, looking at some of these buildings, it kind of reminds me of, like, the Alcatraz map from Black Ops 2, or the Zombies map. And, you know, so I think this could be, there could be a lot to this game, you know, if they added a map like this, the Mostar Bridge. I will re-type these up so you can look up the areas on the video when I edit it. So looks like we're already a half hour in. We just got done talking about Bosnia, so I think that would be, those 2 locations of Bosnia would be great. Let's see, so I could talk about these things a bit more, but let's talk about Lake Erie, Michigan / New York-ish kind of area. I'd be curious if they made the map a little smaller, they cut a lot of the water out, but still had a fair amount of naval combat, and kind of connected New York and Michigan together as a rush map possibly, or a naval strike map in Lake Erie, because Lake Erie is, you know, those lakes are kind of big, you know. That being said, though, I think it would be interesting to incorporate into Naval Strike DLC, or Naval, or just even just a map in general. So, yeah, I mean, you'd be able to incorporate, like, beaches and a wooded area to it. Be woodland combat, you know, not a whole lot of buildings, mostly naval type stuff, but there are harbors and some buildings, or, I don't know, I'm looking at these images, maybe it is just like beaches and shit. Alright, ship, that's a ship graveyard. Oh yeah, there's Pelee Island, fucking cute. Kelly's Island and Pelee Island, Bass Island, Lake Erie. Yeah, I don't know what part of Lake Erie that is. I'm from fucking Minnesota, dude. But yeah, I think a lot of these maps would be great additions to Battlefield, just based on terrain. And let's see, so here's a lighthouse. Here's some buildings. So, Erie's waterfront. Yeah, so there's a giant boat on the land right there. It's probably some museum I'm looking at, you know. If they did, like, Erie's waterfront, I don't know which one I'm looking at, but, you know, whether it's Michigan or New York, but I think this could be a good map too. I don't know, there's not a whole lot to say, other than, yeah, it's a good map, you know. I'm having a hard time justifying, there's a fucking pirate ship in the fucking image that I'm looking at, but
Contact!
yeah, I don't know, that building kind of looks like either a hotel or a fucking hospital or some shit, and then, you know, you obviously got the lighthouse
I
and
got the enemy in
shit,
sight!
you know, and a lot of these maps could be revamped to be fortified with, like, World War III theme type shit going on, you know, and they could add more to it, and that sort of thing. So yeah, I
Contact!
think those maps could be great maps to talk about and to play at, and having all these boat harbors, and maybe cutting down on the amount of water in the middle of the lakes, and maybe like connecting New York and Michigan or whatever. Oh wait, no, it wouldn't be New York, it would be Ontario or Wisconsin. Yeah, Wisconsin. There's... Oh wait, yeah, Lake Erie's right there, so it would be New York. Okay. Getting confused. Alright, so yeah, Michigan, New York, Lake Erie. It would possibly connect Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Ontario. So
I'm bleeding out!
yeah,
Medic!
it'd be curious. I'd be curious how like they would really incorporate and refine this area into the game. Alright, so Syria. I said Syria because, you know, Syria has been at war forever now, and I don't think we've ever seen a map based out of Syria. And I wanted to see a map of Syria Citadel. Sayla. I think this is like a castle, and it's kind of fucking cool. It kind of reminds me of Great Wall of China, but this could be really cool to incorporate and, you know, deal with and play. This would be a fun map to play because it's a lot of wooded area, but it has a castle. There's like a little village over there, I think, in the area, and yeah, I think that could be a fun map. It could have all sorts of like levolution traps and shit to go with it. And, yeah, the wooded combat would be nice too because, you know, it's not airsoft, it's a video game at the end of the day, but, you know, I think, you know, if they get through objects bullet penetration right, it could be good. I don't like how there's 15 different ammos now. They overcomplicated the game by doing so, and I don't like that. So it's just, I don't know. Alright, so we talked about the Syria Citadel. I think that could be a good map, but I think they should also incorporate other parts of Syria into one map. It doesn't have to be one-to-one, you know, it just needs to be a good map at the end of the day, you know, based on Syria's landmarks, capitals, whatever. I just think that the Citadel is a starting point for them, and that goes for a lot of these maps too, is, you know, incorporating all these landmarks, and that's the thing with Bosnia too. You could incorporate those two locations into one map, just for a more complete experience. Okay, now there's the Disco Bay. Disco Bay, Greenland. I think I liked this location because of the Aurora lights. Auroran. Might have been some, yeah, Aurora lights. Greenland. So yeah, I picked this location because of the Aurora lights. Disco Bay, Greenland. It's also an interesting place because a lot of these buildings have a lot of colors to them. It's also very green, but it's very wintry, so it could be a, you know, winter map too that could be incorporated with the auroran lights, and but it also could be a good naval map too, you know, if they added a couple more islands around it. Let's see. And it looks like there's also a mountain in the distance. You could use that for sniping, or use it as an objective to fight over, like on one Great Peak map or whatever from Battlefield 6. But yeah, mostly I think that would be a great map. It could be a great winter map with the Auroran Lights too. I'm trying to think of it. I don't know what the map was, if it was from Battlefield 1 or Battlefield 5. And I think we were playing Grand Operations. We jumped out of a plane, and then it was a wintry type map with like Auroran Lights, and that was a really cool map too. I think from Battlefield 5 too as well, there was one like Mount Everest type map where it was just kind of running through the mountains in this wintry mountain. Of course it's wintry, but you know, it was this one cold mountain map, and it was really cool how they incorporated it, and I'd like to see that come back. I don't know what the name of the map is, but I'm gonna talk about that one right now. Probably should have got some water, but anyways. So yeah, here we are. So we talked about that map, and Madagascar, of course Madagascar. Let's talk about Madagascar. You never have seen, I don't think I've ever seen a Madagascar map, so that's a lot of where these map ideas are coming from, is just coming up with original maps with new potential of flow and opportunity. Madagascar. So it's an island, obviously off the coast of Africa. You know, you could make the two, the island and the continent both into one map and make it a naval strike map. You know, I think that would be, what is it, Mozambique? I'm looking at it right now, and then it looks like there's 3 or 4 very small islands there, which could be good sniping points between the two areas, and it would be kind of like a ravine. I don't know how to maybe a peninsula, is that the right word, between the two landmarks, and that would create a great naval area around that, those two islands. But it also would be a great rush map, you know, possibly too. You know, start at the bottom half of Madagascar, take control of Madagascar, and then work your way across the water and just spawn a shit ton of boats, attack boats, and then it would attack Mozambique, and even just the other islands could have small objectives, or just like ammo supplies over there too, resupplies on those islands, or just, you know, a spawn point, you know, to help break up the attack a little bit. But you know, I think it'd also be interesting if they threw some fucking like lemurs and shit in there too, you know, because it's Madagascar, bro. Let's see, island. Yeah, I mean it's a relatively small island. Holy shit, it's a lot smaller than I remember, but yeah, I think, you know, they could incorporate this into Battlefield, and it would be a great naval strike map, and, you know, maybe add an extra island or two that didn't exist before, but, you know, maybe actually you could add like sand islands. You know, sand islands are a fucking thing too. You know, where like it's dependent on like sea level or some shit, where there's just islands made of sand. You know, and over time they kind of erode and come back, and that could be like a battlefield levolution type thing, or weather effect. You know, that could be really cool. Just looking at some of this stuff right here. But yeah. And then maybe like if you're diving in the water, you could have like some reefs and coral and stuff like that, and make it very aesthetically pleasing. Let's see, what could we include? Wow, I'm surprised Mozambique is, or is it Mozamba? I don't know. New Mombasa? I don't know. New Mombasa. That's like Halo, right? Mozambique. I don't know. I don't know how to fucking say this shit. This don't sound right. Alright. Yeah, I'm looking at it, and it has like a little fucking interstate, and you know, there's a crane and shit, and some buildings, some beautiful images, and I think this could be a great urban area to the map. If they maybe pushed Madagascar closer to Mozambique. I'm just gonna say Africa. If they push it closer to Africa, it could be a lot fucking cooler and a good way to incorporate these islands and maps and into one entity. So, anyways, let's see. So we talked about Madagascar. Alaska Soldier Summit. Is that maybe the one with the roaring lights?
Need a medic! Thank you so much!
Yeah, that might be the roaring lights that we're talking about. Yeah, so we're talking about the Alaskan Soldiers Summit right now, and I gotta look at it a bit more. So maybe this could be a roaring light map. It has a waterfront, a beach, some trees. Oh wait, that's Canada. Never mind. Why the fuck is it not Alaska? So there's a Alaskan highway. Some mountains, uneven terrain. What is it? Fuck, why did I pick this map? I know there was a reason. It's mostly just kind of a terrainy map, you know, water, mountains, woods. Just an overall good general place to be, or some kind of a Giants of Corellia map in that way. Maybe add some bridges, some military buildings, but yeah, I think that could be a great place for a battlefield map. I still stand by it. I think this could be a good area to start, whether it be a winter map or whether it be a summer map, you know, some kind of way. But yeah, enough said about that. So Rio, Brazil, kind of already talked about that earlier. Favela. That's what we want, is more favela. This is modern warfare, siege, you know, I think maybe a Brazil, Rio, favela type map could be a good map to incorporate. Maybe shoot off some fireworks in the background. Fortunately, a lot of these maps I'm seeing are urban combat, and
We are moving on objective Alpha.
my mic turned off again. It's not like it's recording or anything. Anyways, here we are. We're at favela. You know, I think this could be a good map to incorporate in a battlefield. Lots of destruction. If they do 100% destruction, that could be really great for the map. I think they could incorporate the beach and some jet skis, of course. Throw in some fucking dolphins in there for shits and giggles, you know. I don't know if there's actually dolphins off the fucking water over on this beach that I'm looking at, but that'd be funny. Anyways, so yeah, Rio de Janeiro or Favela could be great locations. You know, and that statue of Rio could be cool. Yeah, okay. So we're gonna move on to Tubata Reefs, from Philippines. Alright, so it heard me. I think this could be kind of an interesting area for some naval strikes, some aircraft carriers, a lot of sand islands. I like a lot of the reefy area. I think that could be a great area for Battlefield. I'm just curious how they could kind of incorporate it, because it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of islands. I'm gonna try and look up islands in a second here. So, yeah, it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of islands, but, you know, I think if they did something with the reefs and the Philippine islands, and, you know, it could be a lot. Let's see, is the Philippines near Taiwan? Okay, so maybe if they did something with Taiwan and the Philippines, it could be a great naval strike map, and the reefs. Or maybe even Taiwan and China, kind of like that Madagascar map I was describing earlier. I think that could be really fun to incorporate and to do in this game that we're talking about right here. Philippines. Yeah, I mean, you know, it reminds me of like Golan Peaks, you know, with these mountain peaks or these like hill peaks or whatever, these rock fucking craters and shit. I wouldn't really describe it as a fucking mountain, but just a big fucking hill. Yeah, I think, you know, this could be a really great, fun area to drive a boat through and climb these islands and to get to objectives. You know, it's a beautiful area, that's for sure, but we'll keep going here and maybe incorporate some harbors. And I'm basing this off of AC4 as well too, just kind of like these very clear blue watery areas that look very clean. Maybe a Giants of Corellia type map, and I think, you know, Naval Strike and Giants of Corellia is the vibe I'm going for with when I'm describing this map in my mind. I could take a whole lot longer to talk about this, but I'm just kind of blowing through it. Well, we're already an hour into this shit, and I haven't even finished this first list, so we're gonna knock that out of the park. You know, New Zealand, that could be a fun map. Florida Keys, let's look up Florida Keys. That could be also a good naval strike map, is the Florida Keys. And that area is also just known for being a flooding issue all the time. So I think that's kind of worth talking about. Yeah, if they incorporated something between Florida and the Florida Keys, they could have a good map going there. They would just have to revamp it and make it a lot larger for what the needs are. But yeah, so anyways. Yeah, so dang, there's just like that tiny strip of land that just like fucking miles away from fucking Florida. If they just got rid of those islands, it would save so much time for some of these boats to travel. Like, honestly, that's probably like a couple hours worth of traveling just to avoid the fucking Florida Keys. Like, honestly, so much could change. But anyways, yeah, the Florida Keys are a thing that should be considered. Alright, Nevada, Vegas. So I think Vegas was a fun place to go back in the day for myself. I liked, what was it, the Excalibur? Yeah, Excalibur. That would be a cool place to build a building at. There was also like this, when I was there at the time, there was this place with ex-military vets, and they would run you through like a kill house, and it was like a zombies oriented thing, and I think that would be kind of a neat idea to incorporate into the game. If there was just like a 1 or 2 zombie Easter egg thing, they won't kill you, they'll just annoy the shit out of you. I think that would be funny to incorporate into the map, but I think if they based a map on like some key landmarks of Vegas and then mainly focus in on the Excalibur, because I think that's the hotel I stayed at and that was really cool to be at. That being said, there would be a lot of cars everywhere too, a lot of fucking explosions to go by, and you know, they could make these buildings collapse like fucking Hanan Resort from Battlefield 4, and you know, just I don't think we've ever seen a map with like slot machines and shit like that in a Battlefield game. I think we've seen that shit in Rainbow Six, but I don't think we've seen that in Battlefield. So yeah, that would definitely be a cool option to have. And yeah, so let's see, Kentucky Toyota plant. Ah, that's interesting location. I suggested the Toyota plant in Kentucky because I don't think I've ever seen a map in Kentucky, but I think it would be interesting to incorporate a map this big and on this large of a scale, because remember the factory from Tarkov and shit, that sort of vibe is what I think we should go for. This could be the new Metro if they maybe included some underground tunnels that led up to the factory building, and you know, kind of like Metro, and how, you know, you start at the back of the fucking train tunnels and then you work your way up through the Metro. You could do something like that, you know, and the tunnels are just storage area for car parts, you know. So yeah, I think it would be a very interesting way of going about it to include a map like this. Alright, so yeah. Let's see, Sheboygan Insane Asylum. Okay, this is the place that everybody talks about every year for the airsoft community. I think it'd be a really cool place to incorporate into Battlefield. Shit, maybe have some ghost Easter eggs and have some chandeliers fall when you walk into the room, or the bathtub floods or some shit. But this building has a lot of like rooms, and they also have tunnels underneath these buildings to connect them to other buildings too. I think if they were gonna incorporate it into a Battlefield game, they would have to do a bit more, and it would have to be built kind of like Gulf of Oman, you know. And so yeah, I think this would be another good location to talk about. I'm gonna pull up some more. Sheboygan.
I got enemy in sight. Get down.
So yeah.
Contact. Enemy infantry engaging.
So here's an overview. It kind of reminds me of, you know, the Alcatraz vibes at Black Ops 2, or in Black Ops 2. You got the water tower, there's this weird like X building, like, with another corridor that goes straight through it. Yeah, a lot of these buildings are interconnected with these tunnels and, you know, all these different areas. This could be an upgraded Caspian border type map. They would just have to incorporate a lot more terrain to it, less flat, maybe some more hills on the side with another tower or something, kind of like from Caspian border. I think, you know, Battlefield should stay away from Caspian border because I've had a lot of fun memories on the map. It's just kind of an average map. I think it's best to kind of stay away from that map. It can be put to rest. I don't think it's really that great of a map. It's average, you know, it's not terrible. It's average. Nothing outstanding. I've put my time in. It's a good enough map. Enough said. Alright, so here we are. We are an hour into this shit right now. I am almost done with this list. I got one more to go. I'm going to talk about the Boston Harbor here soon because of Assassin's Creed 3. I remember having a lot of fun on Assassin's Creed 3 with the Boston Tea Party, and you know, I thought maybe a modern take of the game map would be great. Call it Boston Tea Party or the Tea Party or some shit. And, you know, it could be possibly a good take on a naval strike rush map type thing. Could be kind of like Gulf of Oman. You know, everybody starts on the aircraft carrier and works their way towards the city slash kind of where the land starts and stuff. I'm going to take a look and talk about it a bit more in depth. So, yeah, I mean, you know, you got this kind of chain link fence protecting people from going over, and then there's just this stone brick. Yeah, there's a lot of buildings here, a lot, and it might be too much because of just how many. There's already a lot of building maps I've set on this list, and we kind of probably need more spaced out, airy maps. You know, more helicopter friendly maps. You know, maybe shorten some of these buildings and, you know, make it so that the map is more flyable in. You know, but also incorporate attack boats, that sort of thing. I think, you know, there's a lot, you know, to it. You know, if you make it like the Empire state map from Battlefield 6, it could be really good, and that's a good way of incorporating the map. I would just also like to see, though, more vehicle combat, because there wasn't a whole lot of vehicle combat in this game for some reason, and it's kind of a good thing, kind of a bad thing. Anyways. Okay, so I'm gonna fast forward here. So we talked about all these maps. Let's talk about some guns. Oh, I think
There's a big over here.
I should have talked about Israel, Gaza. I think that would be a good area. I don't have it on the list in front of me, but I think we should have an Israel map at this point, with the Iron Dome possibly. So I think there's just kind of a lot to talk about. But anyways, so some weapons to mention. I'm just gonna kind of rattle them off because they're guns. You know, there isn't really a whole lot to go in detail about. Like the JNG 90, the ACR, maybe could return. The MTAR is being seized from production, so just maybe some bullpup. So 249 probably could be retired at this point since the military's going away from that. Mirror's Lag, Diver's Knife, Impact Nades. Okay, we already got those, I think. Flares might be worth putting back in the game if they find a good reason for having them. Let's see. XM25, maybe could make a comeback. AK-12, the RM277, Kuna PCC-9, the H-Car, the AWS, the AK-5C, the 338 Recon, AKU-12, ACE-23, SR-25. I think the M39 is already in the game. 226, Deagle 44, Compact 45, CZ, Spot, SPO-1, Shadow. The Compact 45 is the HK45, and it could be the HK45 or the CT. I think the CT is cooler, personally, but the HK45 I think has more ammo capacity. Let's see, so the CZ SA805 Bren, I think it is, or the CZ805 Bren, could maybe make a comeback. PP2000. The M40A3, the M98B, M16A3 and A4, Bull Magnum, Type 88 was fun back in the day, M93, or M9A3, which is basically a modern Beretta, the AN94, I think we can skip the the AK-74U because we already included the AKU-12. And a lot of these names are just probably names from Battlefield 4. Some of these names might not be real gun names. Anyways, so the 6552, the HK417, and a 9mm AUG would be cool. I had fun with that in Modern Warfare. An FAL, a modernized FAL would be cool. A 9mm Browning. A 9mm PDW, M4, so just a 9mm M4, that'd be great. The Fab Arms pump 12 gauge shotgun, that one's in Siege, I think. God, whatever the foot tracking guy, the heat tracking guy is, whatever that guy's name is, he will be able to, the Mexico operator, not Mira, but the other one. So that one could be introduced.
Jesus Christ, I had every
that
opportunity.
as a pump action
There's
Springer
like
and
4
airsoft,
mechanics
and
right
it's
there.
kind of fun. The FMG9, I think there's a modern one, a more newer one, that it's that like folding gun from Modern Warfare 3 back in the day. I think that could be reintroduced into the game because I think there's a newer modern adaptation that just came out recently. The Spaz 15, the Origin 12 shotgun, the JS2, the AA12, KSG 12 gauge, KSG 12, PPQ, Makarov, and I think some of these guns are on the list already. The GSH 18, Glock 45, like a 45mm Glock would be cool. The GSH 18 is a Russian pistol. The APX 9mm by Beretta, the Thompson, and an STG, like World War II type gun. I think it would be maybe worth incorporating a few guns here and there, just for shits and giggles. I don't see the need for Portal if they just incorporate all this stuff into the base game. You know, that being said, because 2042 fell on its face, and that's honestly, I feel like, why they kind of created Portal, because they knew it wasn't going to do well. That being said, I think they should incorporate those things into the game. Let's see. So, yeah. I mean, I do think that Portal should, to an extent, exist where you should be able to restrict weapons to World War II weapons, modern weapons, all weapons, whatever, do what you want, you know, kind of like the previous Portal, but, you know, obviously more custom game I just got cut off again because of the fucking mic. Anyways, so what's left? The Uzi SA-58 and the M1014. So I think there could be more snipers. I think there could be more SMGs. I think there could be more pistols. But this list already has a lot on it to begin with. Oh, I guess I missed something. Honey Badger, I think that could be introduced. The XM8 is kind of iffy because it was kind of a failed military project. I mean, I think it could be fun to add into the game, but it also just, I feel like it kind of depends going forward on what these maps are going to be and what atmosphere they set going forward, because it's really hard to tell with how lacking the game is right now. It's not terrible, the game isn't terrible, but it's very repetitive and it's simple. And simple's okay. Simple can be very okay. But, you know, that being said, okay, so I mentioned off all the other guns, Uzi, SA-58, and the M1014. Okay, I'd like to see a modern take on the Uzi. I don't know if there actually is one. I think there's a lot more IWI weapons that could be incorporated. That being said, for now, I'm gonna skip this next part because it's just a lot of vehicle stuff. And I think the vehicles are kind of, like, the only thing really to take note of is, like, okay, we need attack boats, an F-35, and a Little Bird. The little stuff here and there, you know, I don't think there's really much to say. Like, okay, we could add a mortar truck, AC-130, stealth jet, Amtrak. Some of these things are already added. But yeah, I've already mentioned this in a prior video, so I'm going to skip that because there isn't really a whole lot to talk about other than we need to make maps that are more open and airy and allow for vehicle combat, but also still have buildings, kind of like Firestorm and some of these naval strike maps, where it allows you to travel between between islands and quicker and help out your teammates a lot quicker. That being said, I'm gonna go look at another video real quick. I think this might be it. Okay, so I was watching some videos. Here's some more weapons we could talk about, and I did mention Israeli Gaza, so I think that could be worth talking about. The Atlas Apollo, I think that's worth talking about. The Desert Tech Wolverine, or the WLVRN. The SSG-08, the RM-277, the IWI US Caramel, the Victrix Corvo, the Compact Scar already being added. The FDP was the more modern of the FMG. So the HM50B2 Gen 2, the HTI, and the MDR. So I think those are all worth talking about putting into the game as guns and maps. Those are the new maps that would not be remakes. Let me clarify that much. Okay, so now I gotta find my video with all the remake maps that should be added to Battlefield. I think that they're worth talking about, and modes. We're gonna try and speed things up. Alright, so right here, I think it's taking a second to load up this video, so do bear in mind this is what I'm dealing with right now. Alright, so Iwo Jima was a great map. I really had a fun time playing that map in 1943, but it was also fun to revisit in 2042. I think that could be a great naval strike map if they maybe even added more islands to it around in the area, maybe allow for some parts of Japan to be shown in the game with that being in the game. I think there's a lot of islands around that area for Iwo Jima. I think if they approached it that way, it could be a lot better. but I do like the classic map. Same goes for Wake Island. I think that was a good map. Dawnbreaker. Okay, so Dawnbreaker is a good map too. You know, it used to be known as Xbox Breaker. I definitely liked, you know, how when you went down underneath into the tunnels, you could blow up the whole city street with the gas backflow or whatever. That was definitely a fun time. But I definitely, that's it. Dawnbreaker is a great example map where there's city life, but it's not too cluttered. It has space to move, and you have so much space to fly around and do things, and it also has that open waterfront too, which unfortunately was short-lived because you could have incorporated possibly like an attack boat, but it was probably for the best that they didn't incorporate it. And anyways, but yeah, Dawnbreaker has a lot to offer. And I think it got a lot of flack because of the fact that everybody's Xbox would crash back in the day because of that map, especially if people were flying jets. That map, I don't know if they ever fixed that map or not in the end. Wake Island, I already talked about. Paracel Storm, this is a good weather, like a stormy map. It had the UFO Easter egg, it had the Megalodon Easter egg and the sharks, and it had a lot of naval warfare. It was a great map to offer. Siege to Shanghai is an instant classic from Battlefield 4. That's worth talking about. Seine Crossing from Battlefield 3. That one's great. Par for the Course. I think that could be a fun little Easter egg map, you know, because it's based on a golf course, and it's a great tank map too. You know, I had fun with that one on Bad Company back in the day. Tehran Highway, that's a good urban map based in Iraq, I want to say, in Battlefield 3. I think that's worth adding back into the game. Crossing Over, that was a Battlefield 3 map. Damavan Peak, I think that was a great map too. Like, purely that map stands out just because of that rush jump at the beginning of the game where you just drop like several thousand feet off a fucking cliff, you know. That map is great just purely because of that experience alone. You know, so anyways, that being said, let's continue on just to get this going through here. Let's see, so we just said Tehran Highway, Crossing Over, Damavan Peak, Over and Out 2 can be a great map. Gosh, which one was that again? I want to say Battlefield Bad Company. Let's see. Let's see, so here we are. Over Out, and yeah, so that's kind of a very muggy, swampy, very dark map. It's not dark as in like the night map, but it's very green and blue aesthetic. And I liked that kind of mugginess. It wasn't very foggy, but it was just very dark to it, like cloudy, and I really like that part of the map. It had a village. It was great for doing Gold Rush, you know, and that was something I wish they always added back to Battlefield, but it never really made sense because it's not a Bad Company game with Battlefield 3. They never really had a reason for a Bad Company 3 other than the fact that they like obviously left us on a cliffhanger with the intentions of making another game, but anyways. Yeah, Over and Out was a great Bad Company map. North Shore Canals was a good Battlefield 3 map, especially on TDM. That was the only time I could justify playing TDM, was playing on North Shore Canals, because they just made all the fucking areas condensed down into that shipping area and that's the only reason to play that fucking map, or play TDM, was because of that fucking map. Oasis, I mentioned that earlier, great map from Bad Company. Grand Bazaar was a fan favorite. I definitely remember talking about that map a lot, playing that map a lot back in the day. It's a great vehicle, infantry map, you know, where, you know, it was super manageable, super playable, that sort of thing. You had White Pass, or wait, so we had Grand Bazaar, Valley Run, and Epicenter. So Bad Company and Battlefield 3, White Pass, that's a Bad Company map, or maybe not. Metro's a classic. You know, Locker was kind of up for debate. I think Metro might have the edge on Locker. Hill 137. I think that was some of the Vietnam from Bad Company. That's what we're talking about. Gulf of Oman. I don't really know if it's really worth putting back into the game because we have New Sobek City. I think that's a good enough remake of the map in a way. It's a modern take. It's not like the complete, you know, same thing. You know, I'm not gonna disregard people's feelings on that, but I definitely think it's worth talking about. So let's see, the Chao Sun Temple. I don't even know. Okay, but whatever. That seemed like it was a good map. I never played some of these maps, but I wanted to bring back a couple maps from each Battlefield to give a lot of variety for Battlefield 6 going forward. Because I think, you know, Battlefield 6, like, Battlefield games in general should last like 5 to 7 years if you ask me. I don't think they should make a new game every 2 to 3 years. I mean, obviously it depends on if the game falls flat on its face. You know, but also it just depends on the era of game that they're making, you know, too. Like, I don't think we need a modern Battlefield game every 2 to 3 years. We should get one like 5 to 7 years for a modern one, or 5 to 10 years for that matter. I think it depends on the generational cycle of these video game companies, especially depending on what Xbox is doing, because everybody's on the fence wondering what Xbox is going to be doing going forward, and that's what's messing with people right now, is just kind of what's going on going forward for Xbox. Because they don't really have any solid plans, and it sounds like they're just kind of backing out of the game. They're just buying all these video game companies. They're not even making games. They're just buying all of them and trying to make bank on them, and they're failing miserably and falling on their face. Okay, that being said, back to some of these maps. So I just mentioned the temple from Bad Company Vietnam. Now we're going to talk about Valparaiso. That's another Bad Company map. That was incorporated into 2042, so you can go back and play it through Portal, if the Portal is working correctly. So we got Panama Canal, that's also a Bad Company. Harvest Day, Bad Company. All of Dragon's Teeth would be great. All of Naval Strike would be great. Propaganda, Land King Dam. You know, I wanted to incorporate some of the Final Stand DLC. I think Giants of Corellia is worth talking about. Gosh, I think that might have been Dragon's Teeth DLC, now that I think about it. That was very North Korea based, I think. Kinda, yeah. Weird. We'll say that and be nice. Okay, so we got the Land King Dam, Propaganda, Altai Range was in the China Rising DLC, Hammerhead, Silk Road, Giants of Corellia again. Operation Outbreak was a very interesting map because that was a map that the community wanted and voted on and wanted incorporated into the game. So it'd be interesting if they did something like that again and talked about what people wanted. But it could be worth just bringing back that map in general. Okay, so Flood Zone. Flood Zone was the map I was talking about earlier, where it floods the entire map when you blow up the dam. So that could be a very interesting map to talk about, incorporate into the game. I was a little generous, I think, with that one, because I think that's a map that could be revamped. That gas station area is kind of fucking useless, and like, I don't know, it could use some work. That being said, though, it was kind of a fun map, very scattered, a lot of construction, what's the word? Structures, we'll say. I don't know, scaffolding. I don't know. The temporary structures used to climb and help build buildings. There was a lot of those, and that helped incorporate a lot of different levels to these buildings and that sort of thing. Okay. Devastation. I don't know what that map was from. Maybe Battlefield 1. Amiens, Battlefield 1. Argonne Forest, Battlefield 1. And Rotterdam, Battlefield 5. So, yeah, I think a lot of these maps are worth talking about. I think these are a lot of great maps to continue to talk about. I want to see this game survive, thrive, do great. It's doing really great right now. I hope it's great in 3 months from now. I haven't been playing a whole lot because I think there's just kind of a lot to do right now. Let's see. So other things I could say, so other maps like End of the Line, Deconstruction. Let's see. I'm just talking about maps right now. Let's see. Okay, so we could also incorporate some Medal of Honor maps too. I think that would be kind of cool. Holland, Kabul City Ruins, Kandahar Market, and Garmazir Town. I think those maps, depending on how the scaling works, they could either combine all those maps into one map, and it would just be one unique map for Battlefield. And it could also help reintroduce the idea of Medal of Honor into the Battlefield
Fucking
fan base,
Xiphon!
because
Oh, you
I
gotta
think
be
there is a place
shitting
for
me,
Medal of
dude. It's
Honor,
been
because
that
Medal of Honor
long.
seemed like it did have a
Fucking
decent story
Tony.
going for it at the time. It was very cinematic with the opening and shooting down that helicopter and the boat blowing up. But that being said, though, there's, I think it has a place, just it has to be rethought out for the game. I spent a whole video talking about that in a different way. I'm not going to explain that right now because we're focusing on Battlefield. But yeah, I think if they could incorporate some of those multiplayer maps into one map and just make it one big giant like Battlefield map, that would be great. You know, because a lot of those Medal of Honor maps are pretty small from the sounds of it. I've never played these maps. I just took a quick look on Google Images to take a look at it and see what I think, and I think that's what they should do, is combine them all into one map, and that could be a really fun experience. Let's see, so, and then, you know, there's some Bad Company maps that could maybe make a comeback. Derailed, Downtown, Everglades, Dust Bowl, Ballroom Blitz, that's a Battlefield 1 or 5 map. Let's see, Battle of the Bulge, Haven, Flashpoint, and El Amiens. I think those are good maps to talk about too, because some of them were from Battlefield 2, some of them were from Battlefield 2042. I think those could be great to reincorporate and make Battlefield 5 or Battlefield 6 a hub for the next like 5 to 10 years. You know, I'd like to see this game continue to thrive for the next 10 years, because that's just what worked for Battlefield 4. You know, that being said, let's see. So, and then let's talk about game modes soon here. Let's talk about Obliteration, Carrier Assault, Defuse, Scavenger, Onslaught, Firefight, Grand Operations, Squad Deathmatch, Air Superiority, Gun Game. So a lot of these maps and modes can be incorporated into the game because I think these should be good replacements for some of the modes on the queue, because we have such a large player count right now, and by adding these modes, it would continue to maintain that number. But I also just think these are better game modes to add to Battlefield long term in terms of support for the game. I Don't mind me, I just got cut off again because the mic just died. Anyways, so as I was saying, I think these maps and modes would be great to incorporate because they are more variety based and they have a lot more to offer, and they're less redundant at the end of the day. Like, I don't see why we need Conquest and Escalation. Like, I get that they're trying to test Escalation out and make the game better at the same time, but I'm just curious, like, long term, I think they should cut one or two of the map or the modes out just to make the playlist simpler, and it helps re-garnish the gaming community back together. I think that's something where it could be like a hidden game mode, where it's like, it's in the game, but it's not on the multiplayer list. You know, same goes with TDM. I don't think we need TDM and King of the Hill. Like, King of the Hill just, I don't know, it's something to do when you're tired of Conquest or Breakthrough, but I just don't really think it's necessary to the game, because I think there's just a lot better modes to incorporate. Like, Carrier Assault was one of my favorites, and I think if you combine Carrier Assault with Breakthrough, you would have something beautiful right there. That being said, going forward, yeah, Carrier Assault and Breakthrough would be a great game mode. I think it's great because back in the day with Carrier Assault, it was a conquesty type mode, and I was playing that the other day on Battlefield 4 before Battlefield 6 came out, and it felt very like the flow of the game was just a very circle-oriented flow. You would capture a base, and then you would chase after the next one, and you'd capture that one, and then you'd go to the next one. Like, it was a triangle of just trying to capture all the bases, and it was not good flow. At some point, you should be able to capture all the bases, you know. And you're just kind of chasing after it, and you don't want to do that. Like, you want to be able to reach a point where you actually, like, you know, reach an end. And that's why I like Breakthrough too. But anyways, it also gives the opportunity for the defenders to recapture the objective if they were slacking for 5 minutes or they all got wiped out. It allows them the opportunity to redeem themselves, unlike with the MCOMs and shit in Battlefield 4. I don't know if in Battlefield 6 they decided to make it engineers could repair them. You know, that would be an interesting mechanic, but at the same time, like, there's just kind of no need for the two modes, you know. It's just kind of a mixed bag, you know. I mean, it's just down to preference. Do you prefer blowing up an MCOM, or do you prefer being able to retake an objective? You know, it's kind of the same thing like with Conquest too. It's like, do we need Conquest if we got Breakthrough? Like, yeah, I think there is a difference there, you know, in terms of game flow and gameplay and whatnot. That being said, though, yeah. So, anyways, let's scroll all the way back up. It'd be cool if there was a Titanfall-based extraction when the game ends. You know, at the end of Titanfall, you have to run back to your ship, and then your ship saves you and flies off into the distance. I think it'd be interesting if Battlefield incorporated something like that. Like, you had to retreat back to your carrier, or, I mean, typically at that point, you're destroying the carrier as the enemy team too, so there's not really a point to retreating other than to get to the carrier and defend to the very end. Anyways, but for conquesty type modes, it'd be interesting to see. So we talked about End of the Line, Deconstruction. I'm just going through and reading all the comments. So Deconstruction is a map that could come back. End of the Line. I talked about those. Reloading and swapping weapons seems like it takes a little longer compared to Battlefield 4. these are just things to mention. Secondary visual slash recoil could look better on certain weapons slash using the iron sights, but aiming has an issue in this game on controller. And I've already talked about that, where the aiming is very clunky now since they updated it from the beta. It used to be super smooth before, now it's kind of clunky. Let's see, carrier assault and breakthrough. So, yeah, combined carrier assault and breakthrough, I already talked about that. Battlefield 6, not Portal. Melee could be more impactful, like BS4 or Halo. Okay, yeah, that's okay. We're not gonna waste our time talking about the little issues. We're just gonna talk about DLC type things. So bullet sponges. Let's not forget obliteration. Okay, so yeah, obliteration. I don't remember what. I think defuse was search and destroy, and obliteration was the mode that was probably the most underrated mode in Battlefield 4. I remember having a fun time with my friends in that. And there would be a bomb put in the center of the map, and you would have to go grab that bomb. It was like capture the flag, and then you would have to bring it to an objective and blow up the objective. And then once you did that, the bomb would be reset, and you'd have to do that 2 more times to win the game. And I thought that was a really fun game mode. I think it was kind of underrated back in the day because I think the internet slash dynamic has changed with how these games are played nowadays, and I think it's worth looking into having that game mode brought back and reincorporated back into the game. That was definitely a fun mode worth playing, and it definitely was one of my favorites. I think that is definitely better or worth talking about over Conquest. I think Conquest has really fallen to the wayside because it's just, it has issues with flow, and most people are gonna have like a half and half experience. It's like, you know, sometimes you're just completely obliterated, and it's kind of to be expected with Conquest, but I think that's where we should do a better job, where it's more consistent. Like in Breakthrough, it's pretty consistent with, you know, kills and stuff, and obviously it's a difference in flow and how the game flows, and your movements are completely different from Breakthrough to Conquest. But anyways, yeah, I think Conquest is kind of an out-of-date game mode, and I think Escalation is a good take on it because some of those games just last forever. You know, not to mention, especially when the enemy team takes a tank or takes a helicopter or whatever, you know, it really can fuck with everything when that happens. So, anyways, alright, so we talked about all this shit. So we're gonna move on now and talked about these game modes. Now I'm just waiting for the other ones to show up here. Alright, so it looks like Infected's coming to the game mode, into the game. One in the chamber, it looks like you could probably do that. Team Snipers would be kind of cool. On Myrak Valley, I think that would be kind of cool to incorporate. Tank slash land vehicle superiority could be kind of cool and neat if you had Jeeps with RPGs and, you know, turrets. Could be worth talking about, you know. And maybe some resupply stations for the guys using RPGs. And then, you know, you have tanks, of course, driving around trying to get whoever they can get. I think that would be a really neat idea. And just maybe straight up naval superiority too, naval warfare. You know, boat fights here and there. And, you know, rib boats, carrier assault boats as bases, and you just have to traverse to the other carrier assault ship, you know, the aircraft carrier, You know, that's what I mean, is the aircraft carriers. We want the aircraft carriers. Just open water in the Philippines, and just, you have to take attack boats, and, you know, there's 50 attack boats everywhere. It'd be a really interesting way to play. And, you know, I think if they all each had their own playlist, it could be a lot of fun. And it is doable because of the new Forge mode. And I'm curious how these things would work out because of that. I haven't quite figured out how to use it yet. I haven't tried making a map yet. I don't know what it's like, but it seems like people are having a fair amount of success with it. I still gotta figure out how that works. An attempt to make a map and just, you know, test all the controls and whatnot and figure out what's the goal or how to get it to work right. Anyways, so we talked about infected, one in the chamber. Now we're talking about team snipers, cranked, and I'll come back to that. So we talked about the vehicle superiority modes, and sticks and stones could be interesting to incorporate because in Battlefield 4 we had bows, and in Battlefield 3 we had crossbows. So, you know, if we had bows, smoke grenades, and knives and sledgehammers, you know, it'd be a fun mode to play or consider talking about. There was always that mode Batman, you know, you run around with a crossbow and a knife and some smokes, and you'd have to sneak around and be all stealthy and get rid of everybody and eliminate them one by one. And then there's Cranked, and Cranked is an interesting mode too because that game is it's from Call of Duty Ghosts, and you would have to eliminate somebody in order to reset the timer. So when you start in the game, there's a timer that counts down from like 30 seconds or a minute, and you have 30 seconds to a minute to get a kill to reset the timer, and if the timer reaches 0, it would blow up. And that led to very forced gameplay where it forced players to come out of camping, and that was a really good anti-camp measure, and it forced people to actually play the game and rush into the game. Like, imagine playing that on North Char Canals. Like, North Char Canals would be crazy to play on fucking Cranked, or play Cranked on that map. Because I remember going like 90 and 60 on that map. That's a lot of fucking kills to talk about. You know, and like, that's a lot of fucking, like, shit to happen all at once if there was a timer and there was just explosions going off all the time in that game mode. So, anyways, yeah, that's
What the
a
fuck
lot
was that shit,
of
dude? How many fucking... No,
information to
that's
talk about
bullshit.
in the past, like 2 hours right now. So, anyways, yeah, I think these are all good game modes and things to incorporate in the game. Maps, especially, that's mostly what this is about, is just maps and weapons. And I'm not gonna sit here and talk about each weapon and why it's so cool and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Like, you know, there's a lot of weapons like the SR2, you know, just a lot of, I think, you know, there needs to be a lot more pistols, there needs to be a lot more snipers. I'm questioning why they threw some of the SMGs in that they fucking did. It looks like a pistol with a fucking kit, and I don't get why they did that. You know, like, it looks like some airsoft shit. I don't like that shit, dude. You know, keep that shit out of my game. But anyways, yeah, I'm curious how they're gonna incorporate some of these gadgets going forward. You know, since we have drones now. You know, back in the day, you used to get like 5 weapons, 4 maps, and a couple extra things here and there. And I'm curious what they're gonna do now since it's premium, or there's no longer premium, it's a season pass. And I prefer premium in all honesty because I don't like these, oh, you only have a certain time to unlock this, and if you don't, oh well, that sucks, you didn't pay for the pass. Like, I don't want to pay for your DLC, bro. Only time I want to pay for the DLC is if it's premium, because then it's like I know what I'm getting. You know, I just don't like season passes. They're very gimmicky, and like I don't know. I don't like that stuff. But you know, something also too about Battlefield 6 is like 5 or 6 years from now, when they're done making DLC, they could resell the game with all the DLC onto one disc. And you know, that would be very cool if they incorporated that, is if they brought it all back together and resold it on one disc as a collector's edition, and maybe added a couple other things for the people who already purchased the game, but for people who will go out and actually repurchase it. Keep in mind, I think that's for more collectors of the game who want to play with like bots long term, and they don't plan on getting the next Battlefield 6 or Battlefield 7, I should say. Because at that point, you know, like, you just never know what the future has to hold going forward. But yeah, you know, 10 years from now, who knows? I can fucking be married and have a kid. Unlikely, but you never know what the fuck's happening in your life. Anyways, that being said, so here we are. This is an hour and 45 minutes into this, and we're just getting done with it. So I'm gonna be overplaying this on my computer, or on another video, not my computer, on another video. Hopefully I turn down the volume enough for you guys to hear my voice in this video. So I'm gonna just, you know, I'm gonna take some notes on the screen. I'll use some text to spell out some of these names of locations and this, that, and the other fucking thing. So that way you guys can take the time to Google search these locations, and feel free to comment in the video on things that can be added, things could be taken away, this, that, and the other thing, whatever, do it. So yeah, here's what we're gonna do. Yeah, I think that's about it at this point. So yeah, I think we're looking at a good time frame for this video.
This rocket launcher sucks so
yeah,
bad, I just don't even want to
about
fucking
it.
waste my time shooting at the tank.
Our troops are attacking Bravo. Objective Bravo has been secured. Our troops have wiped out half the enemy forces.
God damn, they're fucking everywhere, dude.
Defensive position is needed on the market. position. Enemy forces have captured Alpha.
Need a medic!
Hostile forces are almost fully depleted. Do not stop.
I got you! I got you!
We now control Bravo.
Got the good work!
We have lost the sector. Move to defensive positions. All units, final sector is under attack. If our defenses fall, we lose the battle. Hostile forces at half strength. Deplete them further.
How you won?